Good morning. May I please have everyone's attention? Before the meeting begins, we ask that everyone please silence your cell phones. The Fort Bend ISD Board of Trustee meeting is an open meeting for the public to observe the board conducting district business. Therefore, patrons may only address the board during the designated audience items section on the agenda. If you have any printed material you want to present to the board, you must provide them to me or any officer present, and we will provide them to the board. We also ask that the members of the audience please be respectful of others by remaining quiet so everyone is able to hear the proceeding. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. The time is 12:02 p.m. and the meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum attending in person, and notice of this meeting has been posted online and at the Fort Bend ISD Administration Building for at least 72 hours. And we'll begin with public comment. Today there are 3 speakers. And our first speaker we'd like to welcome is Miss Jackie Pipkins. Is there a Miss Jackie Pipkins present today? No? Okay. All right. Well, we will move on then to Mr. Willie Rainwater. And Mr. Rainwater, we welcome you today. And, sir, you'll have 3 minutes. You bet.
Yes,
sir. Okay. I want to thank Superintendent Hubeck and all the trustees for doing an outstanding job. And for Fort Bend ISD, I know it's a difficult task, but, I just want to thank y'all. Just let you know. What my comments are the usual as far as I just don't understand how fairness is obtained here if you do not include all the schools. I just don't get that. I don't understand how budgetary, how we are being good stewards of our budget when if we don't go ahead and make the sacrifice of taking care of everything at one time and then starting over instead of being in a situation where you have to open a school with less than 500 kids or 300 kids or however many kids. It just doesn't make logical sense to me. And all I'm saying is Fort Bend should be an institution to educate all kids perfectly. And when you have kids that are at certain schools, and I'm not going to say which schools, but at certain schools, that are entering their high school years and they're performing on a middle or elementary level, that's not a good thing. And all these things are not parental problems. A child does not have a choice as to what family he or she is born into. But we, us, those of you who are in charge of the educational system, that system can give them a chance in life if the system is set up right. But a lot of the times what we do is we tend to deal with things however we feel benefits us, even though we may not say that. We don't want to look at that way. There's nobody in here, and I see some people older as I am, that can say that in, let's say, 74, when segregation and all that was going on, that busing was a problem. It wasn't busing. It was people not looking like us. That's what the problem was. And right now, the problem is we don't want to face what we need to face in Fort Bend, which is let's take
30 seconds.
Let's take the hard road and let's deal with all of Fort Bend ISD instead of piecemealing things and having reoccurring problems. That's what we need to do. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Rainwater. We appreciate you being here today. Our next speaker is Ms. Stephanie Brown. Welcome, Mrs. Brown. You too, ma'am, will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you all for the hard work that you guys have done thus far. I probably won't even need 3 minutes. I just would like to kind of reiterate on what I said in a previous time that I spoke here. I don't know what's going to happen or what decisions that you have made, but in 2021, you guys sent information to the district saying that the school would open with 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. Dr. Dupree sent a letter to the St. Anna residents explaining everything that would happen with this new build because the communities pushed back against the rezoning of a couple of schools, which was Elkins and Ridge Point. So I'm imagining that those communities got together, pushed back hard because of all of the things that we saw on television, the protests and all of that. So these communities asked for the school. So whatever pushback that you're getting now of people not wanting to go, I think you guys need to go back and look at those letters and documents that were circulated throughout the communities in 20 and 21 when that school was getting ready to be built. All the pushing and shoving and everything that's going on now, it's sort of like, why are we here? When the blueprints were there, when you guys decided not to rezone in 2018, took it off the map totally in about 1 week, and then you came back and surprised all of us and said, we're not going to do anything. So I feel like what we're fighting about now, it does impact the entire Fort Bend ISD, but just like my friend said, right, wrong, or whatever is done. But I see you guys change all the time. PASA data changes. Sometimes it's not correct. The 10-year projections sometimes are not correct. So I don't know what can be done now, but I think that you should go back to the drawing board or we'll be back here again with a rush decision, just like it was made in 2018-19, to say, you know, what are we going to do now? Now you're trying to borrow people from other neighborhoods that you didn't want to put any kids in anyway. So my thing is, whatever it is, starting a school, $200 million with under 300, 400 kids is a waste of money. Maybe you should think about not even opening it. The people don't want to go there anyway, but it's here. So just like Superintendent said, that ship has sailed. And another thing, anybody that's out there still saying that Marshall should not have been built, you should be ashamed of yourself. The kids are not a building. They're kids. And it's been 20 years, y'all. Come on. And the other schools were not underutilized because of Marshall. Y'all did the shifting just like you're trying to do now. You sent those kids from Willow Ridge to Elkins, then you sent them to Hightower, and then it was time to come back because they in the rain.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. All right, that concludes our public speakers tonight, or excuse me, I'm used to nights, this afternoon. We'll now move along to our information item. And the information item we have is item A, Almeda Crawford High School Attendance Community Overview. And I will turn it over to Ms. Martinez for the overview. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon, trustees. Is that better? Did I quit humming? Okay. Could you turn the slides for me, please? Well, thank you. We're back today to show you the recommendation that we discussed on Friday in the workshop and then the additional scenario. So the first information that we'll go over is staff's recommendation or the administration's recommendation, and this is scenario E, as you saw it on Friday, with splitting Planning Unit 258E, and that's the front portion of that neighborhood, to attend Ridgepoint High School. And this is to address some of the concerns from the community that came up with lack of clarity around the communication that went out regarding the 2 miles that was intended for cap and overflow. But we understand that many did believe that to be setting precedents over boundary planning. We have taken that note, taken heed of that, and in the future when we communicate, we'll be very specific about the way cap and overflow, if it ever needs to happen again in this district, the way that we communicate that. And it does leave that back portion of that area attending Crawford, and then it moves up towards Highway 6. Planning Unit 245A to Crawford out of Ridge Point. And just to note that that area is an area that is going to be rezoned from Heritage Rose to Schiff. So that will include those Schiff students moving to Crawford that are in attendance in that area. Now, the highlights of this recommendation are that it does open Crawford with 542 students and relieves Ridge Point somewhat, very close to the original recommendation relief that you all saw in that scenario, which gives us the opportunity to likely be able to move back in our cap and overflow and perhaps give choice to our rising 10th graders who have siblings at Ridge Point. We would need to do some work around that to make sure of the numbers who would desire to stay with siblings before we could determine that and confirm, and we would have a very quick turnaround on assessing students and families as to whether or not they would want to stay. That's the way Ridge Point opened, with rising 10th grade siblings being able to have that choice as well. I'd also like to point out here that it does allow Hightower with academies in that very bottom table there to remain within that ideal utilization, honestly, between 80 and 90%. That's where we like to have our buildings, and that is inclusive of the programming that is there at Hightower. And as you look at this, just a reminder for the community, I know board members, trustees, you're aware of this, but Crawford would be fed by Ferguson Elementary in Siena, Leonetti Elementary in Siena, Heritage Rose Elementary, and then part of Schiff Elementary. And so as Siena continues to build out in that red area there, you would see the numbers and the percentages of Siena students increase, with knowing that Ferguson is our 5th elementary school in the Siena area, and we anticipate pending bond and financing availability as well as land to open a 6th elementary in the future in the Siena area as well. This next slide shows what you've seen prior, and that's the feeder pattern splits for this recommendation, as well as the transportation cost, which shows the differences in the transportation cost with these changes. As we all know, there's a greater transportation cost involved in transporting all of the students, but this puts a focus on those areas, moving that 258E to Crawford, the backside, and transporting those students, and then 245A moving out of Ridge Point and into Crawford. The next scenario, Madam President, I'd like to ask, are there questions? Do you want to stop for questions on the recommendation or move into the next scenario that the board asked for?
No, that would be great. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. We can open it up for discussion and questions. Do we have any questions on scenario E? Yes, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam President. Just more of a procedural question. So can you help me understand, I guess, are we going to vote on one or the other options? Or are we going to discussing, and what's the process to kind of sort between which option?
Sure. So currently the agenda is set up that we're going to have this information item. We'll review everything, and then with hopes to take action thereafter at item 4. And it would be for one of the options, yeah.
So basically just open for a motion at that point, so somebody can make a motion to approve one of the other options, and then that would either pass or fail.
Exactly, when we get to the action section of the agenda.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. I don't see any other questions. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Day.
I have a question on this presentation for the transportation costs. So I saw you have 245A to ACHS, right, to Crawford, but I compare this one with the other scenario, 226, they are going to Hightower. They also have transportation cost, right? For the scenario.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
So the cost should be comparable, is it? Or there's more or less,
I would ask Tracy Love or Mr. Mike Johnson to address that question specifically from a transportation's perspective. I am so sorry.
No, that's
Mike Jones.
That's to Crawford. I'm asking for scenario E, those 225 will go to Hightower. So I want just to confirm the cost, maybe the rather comparable, the same.
The cost of transporting between E and D?
So no, so if you look at the scenario D, there is 3 things listed, right? And the transportation cost is $226 to Crawford is $12,000. But then if you look at the scenario E, you only listed 258E to Crawford, 245A to Crawford. I assume the section 226 to Hightower will also have transportation cost.
Yes, ma'am, and those distances are equal.
So it should be 12,000, right? About the same. The cost.
For
Yeah.
226,
Yeah, to Hightower.
the Hightower, yes, ma'am, that transportation, they're the same distance between
distance,
Hightower
okay.
and Crawford.
Thank you for that. So that way we can compare apple to apples.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Day. Any other questions or discussions? No. Seeing none, let's continue on, please.
Okay, thank you. So the next scenario is one that was discussed on Friday, and this is to split the front portion of 258E, again, going to Ridgepoint for the reasons I addressed earlier. But then the difference that you'll note in this map is the area we just discussed moving down to Crawford, along with the planning unit directly to its left or west, moving to Hightower High School, with the addition of the community, the elementary boundary that's being moved out of Heritage Rose Elementary and was originally going to rezone at the elementary level and be attending Hightower High School, moving that south down to Crawford High School. And what you'll see in your numbers here is an increase to 597 for the students at Crawford, and a bit of an impact to Ridgepoint, lowering Ridgepoint slightly more than the previous. However, the reason we're recommending the first scenario and not this one from a staff perspective is it's a lesser amount of disruption to the community, especially to communities who were not aware of this potential move, and it also creates less movement within the boundaries and allows feeder patterns to stay together with those students, particularly north of Highway 6 there in the Burton Goodman area, going from Baines to Hightower together as a cohort rather than separating down to Crawford. You see there also it does keep Hightower High School around the same projection, although a little bit of a difference there, taking them up to 90% in the 10-year outlook. And then what you'll see on this next slide is our feeder patterns and the feeder pattern splits, along with the transportation cost associated with those particular moves. And this was one that board members, you all had asked for us to run for you so that you could see this as an outcome of the conversation on Friday during that workshop. So I would open it up for any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez. Mr. Garcia?
Thank you, Madam President. I had one question. I think we talked last Friday. When the SBOC was deliberating on the different options, they did see several options that we didn't see at our board meeting, correct, but it wasn't necessarily D, because D is something we came up with. Did they see scenario E at all, or in some portions of it during any of the SBOC meetings?
So they saw previously named scenario A and B,
right.
But you all saw those same scenarios at the February 13th
right.
board meeting.
But they didn't actually see E as a possibility during the deliberations, and they just sort of kicked it out, and it didn't make it to us. But so I just wanted to make sure, because I know y'all talked about last week that y'all talked about some other scenarios that weren't presented to us at our meeting earlier this month. I wasn't sure if this particular one was one of those. I know it was more of an A, like a variation.
It was an A and B. I'm fairly certain on that. Yes, that is correct. Just want to check with folks back there with so many different scenarios that we have discussed. So thank you.
Pyle, would you like to speak on that?
Sorry. To answer your question, so the SBOC saw scenario A and scenario B as Ms. Martinez was mentioning. What you're seeing in this scenario is a combination of those. So in the first scenario that they had seen, it was all of 258E and 245A at play, whereas B only had that front portion. So now what you're seeing is a combination of something that the SBOC has seen.
Okay, I just wanted to make clear of that. Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Yes, Mrs. Hannon.
Thank you, Mrs. Malone. And please forgive me. I had a busy weekend, so I couldn't get these questions to you. If you do not have this information, that's on me. But can somebody tell me the distance between 245A and Hightower, 243A and Hightower? So how far is it from Hightower and how far is it from Crawford? And what does that equate to in a bus stop pickup time? And if you don't have it,
Thank you. We can come back to it. Yes.
Okay, and then
Transportation will pull it.
I would have the same question about the distance of planning unit 226 to Hightower and 226 to Crawford, and the same question: what does that look like on what time do I got to get on the bus? That's what I want to know.
Is that all, Ms. Hannon? Okay.
Okay, I think Ms. Love has the information.
Okay, so the second part of that from 226 to Crawford is 5.4 miles, 5.5 miles to Hightower. We figured that times our mileage times 175 days. Depending on how our traffic's flowing down 521, it could be that we start picking them up, 6:30. But if traffic is really bad, then we're going to have to bump that up. So it's a traffic flow. It's 5 miles, no traffic. We can be there in 10 minutes, right? But, so it depends on what you hit. So the time, we originally will back the time up from arriving at the school at 7 o'clock and back it up from there,
Okay, so both pickups would be about 6:30.
We're hoping, don't, until I actually am looking at the scenario, then I can give you an actual, but I'm going to say, we start picking up high schools anywhere from 6:10 to 6:30. So
I know.
Okay.
And did the distance also 245A, 243A to Hightower and also to Crawford?
We're figuring that right now. And part of the issue on Hightower is because of where that's located, it's got to go down to Till Run and come in the back way because we can't go straight across Highway 6.
Okay.
So there's some extra mileage that's included in that. Now, when we leave, we can come out down the toll road and turn, but either one of those, because of them being beyond the toll road, you got to go down to Till Run and come up Till Run and come back to the school. I want to say off the top of my head, I thought it was like 6 to 7 miles one going, but we're figuring that for you.
Okay, and then this one is for maybe Miss Martinez, and this one didn't come to me this weekend. But for our campus, for our students who start their day off or end their day at the CTE, do they have to catch the bus and return on the bus to? Would any of our my first question, are any of our sophomores riding buses to CTE, or is that mostly juniors and seniors?
Dr. Limley can address the CTE.
See, it looks like it's on, but then it's not. Most of our students going to the CTE Center are juniors and seniors. We do have some sophomores that are going, and we are working on the schedule for next year so that our students, we hope, will be able to return back to their home campus before that afternoon bus leaves. So I don't know if that was part of your question or not.
Well, so I guess that leads me to another question. So most of our kids can't get to the campus to pick up the CTE bus if they are riding the bus to school. Their zoned bus to school, they have to be driven to their campus to be able to get there in time for the CTE bus. Is that correct?
I don't know that that's correct 100%.
Can most kids pick up the CTE bus at their campus after they get off the bus that brings them from their neighborhood to the school?
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. I can certainly double check on that for you, though.
So the question is, do the buses from neighborhoods arrive, get the children to the high schools in time, or then they can get on the CTE bus that takes them to the recenter?
Yes, ma'am. In the morning, they go to their high school campus. I'm sorry, we go to certain campuses and pick them up, like Travis High School. The kids all go to Travis. We send a bus to Travis. They take them to CTE in the morning.
Okay.
Okay. In the afternoon, for that, then we do a midday. And then in the afternoon, because of their release time, they're released at same time as high school, or 2:30, I think. So we try to get them back to campus, but the parents are responsible for their transportation home. It is not something.
Okay, so these kids cannot get the bus home. So so that's a
some of them may.
Some they might.
You know, like Kempner. Kempner's 10 minutes from there. They may, but technically they sign an agreement that they are responsible to get the kids home from CTE.
Okay. Okay.
Otherwise,
and
we
thank
have to
you.
hold
I know
all buses.
transportation is confusing, but we're also supposed to be, we're doing this as a student-centered approach to how we're getting kids where they need to be. So my other question is, for any boundary changes that happen, if a student has closer access or a ride, let's say, to Ridge Point, but they're at Crawford, can they catch the CTE bus at Ridge Point, or must they catch it from their home school?
I think we're pretty flexible on that. It's kind of like Academy sometimes,
So whatever's closest, a CTE kid
we just need
could,
to know where they're catching it for our bus loads.
And do we communicate that to kids?
We work really close with Mr. Lamb and Ms. Skeleton about where the kids go. He sends us the roster, and he'll call. I have one girl that, hey, I can't make it to here, but I'm actually closer to here, but I'm zoned here. So we say yes in that case. We don't leave it as a free-for-all, because then parents start picking where.
Oh, no, I know you've got to pick your spot and stick with it. I understand that. Okay, thank you for allowing me to ask those questions, Mrs. Malone. Thank you for the answers.
Ms. Sandin, I just want to reiterate that Dr. Erdy is also very, very involved with her students, and she works with them in those very same capacities. And like I said before, she's working on a plan for the schedule next year to get them back to their home campus in time for that afternoon bus to go home. So that shouldn't be a concern anymore.
Okay, because
Can you repeat what you just said, Dr. Limley?
Sure. About the CTE Center?
Yeah, in the afternoon bus, because actually you just hit a light bulb in my head on something.
So currently what happens is the CTE Center releases at about the same time as the high schools, and so there's that afternoon transportation that they're not afforded in most cases. Dr. Erdy is aware of that and has been working on adjusting the schedule for the coming year, which is going to, number one, help more students attend Reese, and number two, get them back to their home campus before that afternoon bus leaves so that they are afforded transportation on the way home in the afternoon as well.
Okay. Thank you. And Ms. Sandin, do you have additional questions? Are you good? Okay. Well, thank you. That lights went off in my head just a minute ago. And so I need a little bit of clarity, speaking of CTE, because I understood you said picking up from Travis, and maybe we don't pick up from all high school campuses. We do. So at Hightower, there is a bus that's going to take them to the CTE or Crawford or Ridge Point, and that's a non-issue. Uh-huh. Okay.
Thank you. I think they depart there at 2:30.
Okay.
Maybe 2:35. and they take them back to every single campus. Now, some of these we have to double because we don't have the manpower to do it. So some may be 2 campuses, some may be just 1 campus. It also depends on the number of students. If it's a large academy, then it's 1 bus.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm there was transportation back to their campuses and forth, because that's what I had understood it to be.
Yeah.
And for a second it was...
And Ms. Hannon, the mileage from round trip for the Shipman's Cove and 243 and 245 is 8 miles. And then to Ridge Point, it's 7 miles one way, so 14. Let's just double it, 14 miles to Ridge Point.
So I'm sorry, it's 8 miles to Crawford?
No, that's to
Hightower.
Crawford actually is about 8, but let's go. We did back to Ridge Point, so you wanted to know.
Okay, so Ridge Point, you said I didn't ask for Ridge Point, but
You can have that.
I kind of knew how far that was. So Ridge Point's about 7, Crawford is 8, and how?
And then it's 4 to Hightower.
It's 4 to Hightower. Thank you very much.
I would add to receiving some information from Mr. Brogan, principal at Ridge Point, that some students do arrive at Ridge Point prior to, in order to make sure they make the Reese bus. So there's some instances where the buses may leave like in the afternoons before the students return from Reese, and so they work with their students to arrive on campus for that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Hamilton.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, just wanted to kind of piggyback on Trustee Day's comments or questions. So I think it is helpful to point out that the transportation costs are just the impact of that zone going to that school. And so so just looking at 243A and 245A on the modified D proposal, so that $14,000 for those 2 zones going to Hightower, it seems obvious to me that the cost would be greater for them to go the farther distance to Ridge Point, and so it would actually be a net savings for them to go to Hightower. And so then I guess they said that it's basically a similar offset between the 226 going to either high school. But then just looking at the numbers, so I think from our discussion on Friday, I appreciate Trustee Hannon pointing out just the desire to comply with the policy and make sure that the SBOC has been consulted on what we're looking at here. And so with that in mind, I think looking at the numbers at each school for these 2 proposals, they're very similar between the 2 proposals. And so I think with that being the case, I think the SBOC effectively did review almost the same thing of what E is, with just some slight variation. Between the 2 proposals they did review. I'm comfortable saying they reviewed basically scenario E, and that they really haven't viewed the other scenario. So also just want to point out, so I took a picture of myself from my balcony this morning, and like with my back to the view, and I can see in that picture, you can see the Ridge Point High School athletic field lights, and you can also see the houses that are in 258E. And so I just want to express my appreciation that we're at least rezoning some of those, portion of 258E back, keeping them at Ridge Point. And then also just to highlight, so I'm not affected by any of this personally, but I'm right there in the middle of it. And then I also drove east along Highway 6. So I do think maybe this is just a preference thing, but going east on Highway 6, you can turn north on the Fort Bend Toll Road, and that's the way that I usually go when I go to Hightower, instead of going past it and then U-turning back to Till Run, or back at Till Run. And so I think there is a way to do that that's a little bit easier. And then I also drove down 521 from Highway 6 to Crawford High School. And so I in the past, 521 was not in very good condition, and so I think it's in much better condition now, which I'm happy with. Although I know some of what was expressed on Friday concerns me that they're doing some major construction next year that would be ideal if all of that was going to be done before the school opens. But anyways, all that to say, I think just looking at the pros and cons, I think that that scenario E would be my preference personally. So.
Does that conclude your? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for your comments. Mrs. Williams.
Okay, I'm needing some type of clarification. When did we get Hightower into the mix? And if they're in the mix, they're in front of Sienna. Which map should I be looking at where these kids can at least be enrolled in Crawford? 243A, 245A.
So, ma'am, the map for Crawford for those two campuses are going to be scenario E.
E.
Yeah, that's the one Mr. Hamilton just said that he's more in favor of.
Okay.
And when did the other ones get in the mix to Hightower? That was at the workshop that we just had last Friday.
Last Friday.
And so last Friday we had, my goodness, how many options were there?
A lot. Too many.
There were 5.
5 additional or 6 total. There were a lot of different options, and so we kind of pulled through. You were there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how we got
that. That was the first time. Yeah, because I was wondering, because this community haven't even spoken about being zoned to Hightower. And I would think that if we're going to cross 6, we need to keep them on that side of 6, where they can go to Crawford. So I'm with Trustee Hamilton on this. So I should be looking at scenario E, where we leave Hightower, where we don't move Sienna residents over to Hightower, the front for it. Is that the one you're looking at?
Well, and that would be consistent with your point on Friday where you felt like we shouldn't be adding additional children to the campus.
Right. So
right.
I'm going to go with E. Okay.
Okay.
Fine. Understood.
All right, great. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Day.
Thank you. So first, I want to say to my peer trustees for all the work you have done on Friday. It was a lot of work, and I just wanted to clarify. When I was told about Friday's meeting, I was told about 3 things. First, as Dr. Wayback stated at the beginning of the meeting, I was told the meeting was really for administration to present different scenario based on the board input and the community input. And so the board can have a different scenario. The second is in order to comply with the policy, we will have SBOC participate in the meeting. And the third one was the meeting was scheduled from 11 to 1. So under that, all the 3, I really, when I start watching the meeting, I was very surprised how much work, how much discussion, in-depth discussion was putting into there on Friday that I was not able to participate. So I wanted to really thank everyone for the work, and I wish I knew, so I would have done my job by providing my comments, because we had the information on Thursday. I already read everything before I came to the meeting, but I just wasn't aware that actually was happening. I just want to make clear that that being said, though, I appreciate all the questions and discussions. But I appreciate the question Ms. Hannon asked about the policy. So if I understand correctly, we are okay because it's the board policy, and it is okay for us to not to strictly follow it. Is that correct? Is that I listened to that part. Can you please, confirm?
That is true. The board policy belongs to the board. If there are circumstances in which the board feels that there's a need to deviate from the board policy, you're free to interpret it, and you're free to suspend it for any purpose that you think appropriate.
Okay, thank you for that. So that being said, though, I appreciate the transportation, the information from transportation. So based on what I hear for scenario E and the scenario D, there's no major substantial difference between those two. So I see your confirmation. Thank you for that. So if that's the case, I think also I appreciate Dr. Gilliam's question, say asking for Dr. Wayback's for your recommendation. I think Dr. Wayback made a recommendation for scenario E. So based on that, I think I also support scenario E. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Day. Mrs. Hannon? Okay, disregard. Ms. Williams, did you have additional comments?
I did. So Crawford would be opening at 542 students if we go with scenario E. Now, what happens if that number increase? Are we planning for more students if we're going to open this campus up as a transfer campus?
So we did discuss that as a board as far as alleviating some additional Ridge Point if there were kids who wanted to go to Crawford. And for me, I support that fully for Ridge Point because that's the area of not pain, but that's the area where there's
Robust capacity.
Yeah, where we are being overutilized currently.
And to add to that, our next step would be to get a solid response from the cap and overflow students at Hightower as to whether they wish to remain. Remember that half of them are juniors and seniors or to be juniors and seniors, so they couldn't go to Crawford anyway because we're not offering junior and senior programming. So they would, that's where we would need to see the numbers. And you may recall last week I shared that we did some informal polling of kids. We were pleased that a lot of them did want to remain in Hightower. We felt like that was a good kudos to Hightower, but we also had some difference in the informal polling between what students thought and what parents thought. So now we need them to get on the same page and give us that feedback, and then based on those numbers, then that would also, Ms. Williams, help to be a determining factor. Would those ninth graders fit into Ridge Point, or would they need to have an option of staying at Hightower or going to Crawford? So that's kind of to be determined based on the number.
Okay, and the reason for my questioning is because you can recall I brought it up on Friday about PEG students who may want to transfer to this campus. I've also spoke with the Department of Education, and what they stated is that we cannot, we must provide these students with transportation. Transportation cannot be a barrier. And it's also listed in the Texas Education Code. So I need for legal to look at this as they looked at the other policy and understand that if you're currently providing SPED students transportation to McCullough and or Willow Ridge, you must do the same if they choose to go to Crawford. If you're currently providing any student on those campuses with transportation, you must do the same. So I'm needing legal to look at that and to see if I'm interpreting the law right, because we may have more students coming. And also McKinney-Vento students, if you have homeless kids that want to attend Alameda Crawford, transportation is a must. It's not optional. So I need to have that looked at because I am going to put that out in my information about circulating information about Willow Ridge's PEG. McCullough students can transfer, so can Willow Ridge. That's the first thing. Second thing I'm going to put into play is the transportation. SPED students, specifically McKinney-Vento, any students seeking protection under our federal education laws must be provided with transportation.
We'll certainly look at that to make sure that all the students that require transportation will get transportation to the campuses that they will attend, for sure. So thanks for bringing that up.
And what are we doing to get the information out? Because a lot of parents, as we know, we have a divide. Those parents are low socioeconomic. They don't have access to the internet. What are we doing to make certain that these parents know that they have this option?
So what we've done so far is we've shared it with campus principals to share it with the families through Blackboard. So that's how they receive it, through email. And then we also put it on their website, but we can also follow up with the campuses to see if they also had hard copies, because I believe in the past we've had hard copies in the front office available to share with the parents. But if that's not adequate, we can look at what other ways to make sure the parents are aware about it.
No, they had hard copies at one campus, but they were told that they ran out. So I had one of my constituents send me a copy of the application. I made copies, and I'm going to deliver copies to some of the people in that community to let them know they have an option. If you want to stay fine. But if you want to go, we need to make certain that we're getting that message out. So I do appreciate you, and I appreciate the effort. I just want to make certain that they understand their options.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. And unless the law's changed, which legal, if y'all could look into it and find out, I don't believe PEG provides transportation. And I'm pretty familiar with PEG transfers, or at least was years ago, because I'm on one.
But this is what you got to understand.
So if the law has changed, that's one thing. But McKinney-Vento is a completely separate thing.
Right, but the law has not changed. In what they're getting confused on is the words. It's saying district, out of district, because, PEG students can go to a school in another district as well. So when they say we don't have to provide students with transportation out of district, what these students are doing is transferring intra-district.
Yeah, no, ma'am, I understand. I'm on an intra-district transfer currently.
Right.
So I completely understand, and I also know many other families who are on intra-district transfers, and so far transportation is not provided. So if legal can look into it, and if the law has changed, that's one thing. But I do know years ago it was not the case.
Ms. Malone, we will certainly do that.
Okay, thank you. And the difference on the funding usually, Ms. Williams, is that if you do intra-district, the funding doesn't follow the kid. If the kid stays at the home campus, it used to be 10% remains late. You would get an additional funding of 10% for that child on that campus to try to support additional staff. If the child leaves the district, the funding follows the child out of the district. But if the child changes a campus within the district, we do not get the additional funding.
Right. So I'm going to screenshot just like I screenshot last Friday. But you are correct. The law did tweak a little bit.
And it may have. The law changes all the time, right?
Okay.
All right. So let's see. Do you still have additional?
No.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, though. Ms. Hannon.
Yes. Just one more point of clarification. Does Ridgepoint have any large special programs in the plan? If they do, are they going to stay there? And by special programs, I mean like any special education units or behavior units?
We'll look at
they
that
have
to
any-
be able to give you specifics. Give us a couple minutes and we can respond to that.
And then also, are there any plans that any units that would have a lot of students in them, are they opening at Crawford? Any special education units? Those would typically be that. And so I'm going to just...
Mr. Fickle has a look that says he's privy to some information.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Fickle.
Certainly. So this isn't definitive. Is it not on? Sounds like I'm on. Hello? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. It's just,
Okay, well,
Okay.
so at this point, things are still in a planning stage, but over the weekend, I reached out to Ms. Hill, Dr. Hill, to find out if there are any kind of changes to ideas that she had about programming coming to Crawford when it comes to self-contained programs. And so there are some programs that will be coming to our school. Now, whether they'll be large or not, I can't speak to that because that still kind of depends on, I guess what you guys decide today in terms of boundaries. So, but yes, there will be some self-contained programs coming. And what, I don't know if I should really say what they are, but I could, but I won't. So Dr. Hill has been working with me to come up with some programming that would be some self-contained programs.
Thank you, Mr. Fickle. And so that goes a little bit back to our policy that says that we need to be, understanding and thinking about the programs that are on the campuses as well when we go through this process. And to Mr. Hamilton's point, on Friday I did talk about the importance of policy because governance is one of the big three reasons, right, that we're here. And so with that, I think in a way that policy has been suspended because like Friday's event was to me very not necessarily usual in that the board would be, getting into the weeds, so to speak, of that. So my point to you, Mr. Hamilton, is while I do think it's very, very important, I want to also underscore that I mentioned the importance of long-term planning and looking ahead and thinking about, even though it's 10 years out, are we going to have to move kids? And I also go back to one of these scenarios puts a kid on the bus for 8 miles per day round trip versus 16 miles a day versus 14 miles a day. And that's a long time on a bus, especially when it's 97 degrees and 97% humidity. And so just wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Hannon. Dr. Gilliam?
I know that you all are looking this up, but it is my understanding that Ridgepoint, with the special programs, they're in another place. Not necessarily. They don't have as many as we would think.
They don't. They have the sales, they have adult transition, and there are about 8 to 10 students in that at Ridgepoint. And then there are about 30 sales students. So that's all that they have there on site.
And those 2 programs will remain there, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, we believe so.
And then there are other programs, so where students are sent to different schools for those programs?
Yes, there are. Dr. Lawson has that information.
Okay. I think it would be good for the board to know what those programs are that are over. Do you understand what I'm saying with Elkins? I don't know if it's at Elkins or if it's at Hightower.
Sure. We have, Dr. Hill has an entire handout here with all of our programs, different locations. I'd be happy to provide the board.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Housed at each campus if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Mrs. Day?
So I just want to follow up with Ms. Hannon's comment. I was under impression the transportation, they are very similar. Did I misunderstood that? And now she mentioned the miles. It sounds very different.
I think she's referring to the 245 if it were to go to Hightower versus Crawford.
Yes, so that will change from scenario E to scenario D, right? That's the difference between scenario E and the scenario D.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there is a difference.
There's it's 4 miles in the morning or 8 miles in the morning, and 4 miles home or 8 miles home.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I didn't catch that. Thank you for that.
It may have also been a little confusing because they were also sharing with you the miles they travel now to Ridgepoint. And the difference that's minimal is what they do now to Ridgepoint and what they would do to Crawford. It's like 1 mile difference. That may have been part of the confusion on that one.
So, Mrs. Malone, may I just read the numbers back to Ms. Day? So the distance from in the 245A and 243A scenario that it is 4 miles to Hightower, it is 7 miles to Ridgepoint, and it is 8 miles to Crawford. That's one way. The distance of 226 to Hightower was 5.5 miles. The distance of 226 to Crawford was 5.4 miles.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That actually...
Because, let me ask about programming between the 2 options. Would there be any differences between programming between D and E?
No, not because of the boundaries. The programming, typically there's a review of the number of students and where those students are zoned and where those programs are. In some instances, they are moved because of overutilization or underutilization, but these programs in this instance, it would be programmatic and in isolation of these decisions.
Okay.
I might add in for clarification, one of the reasons why when looking at these scenarios, the administration recommends E over the D is when you look at attendance zones 225 and 226, which are in blue north of Highway 6. Those students have just been zoned.
Yeah. Ms. Day or Ms. Williams, do y'all have additional information you want to share?
Yeah, no, I was trying to show Ms. Williams on the map the difference between scenario E and scenario D modified, which to the 245A and 243A to Hightower, right? That's D actually. That's not E. That's D. And then the 255 going to Crawford. I was just pointing out to her on the map. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, do you have additional questions about it?
I do. I need the Vice President to explain to me, to help me better understand, because I respect her opinion, and she's just trying to show me maybe I have missed something.
So, no, just to follow up with Ms. Hannon's comments, right? So, scenario E is 243A, 245A, going down to Highway 6 and go down to Crawford, which is, okay, I just wrote it down, 7 miles one way, or 8 miles one way. And then the scenario D is here, like 225 over here.
Okay.
So now they were zoned to Ridge Point.
Okay.
Now we are moving this part to Hightower. But for scenario D, they are going to Crawford, which is closer. So that's the difference. I don't. Sorry, did I lose you? So for the. Okay, so maybe I can refer this to transportation to confirm. Can you please confirm the zone 225? How many miles is there to go to Crawford versus the 225 goes to Hightower? I know you probably already said that number, but just to clarify.
Yes, ma'am. They're both the same distance. I mean, it's maybe tenths of miles off between the two because they're right side by side.
Okay, so the only difference is the 243 going to Crawford is further than to going to Hightower.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you for that.
All good?
Thank you, Madam Vice President.
All right. Awesome. Everybody clear on that one then? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So, and Ms. Martinez can help me chime in. The reason in looking at these two and why else we recommended E over D is that when you look at the blue section north of Highway 6, which is 225 and 226, the scenario D, one thing it does is it's splitting that. Both of those units, 225 and 226, are newly rezoned this year from Heritage Rose to Burton and Goodman. So the families are having that change. Then they would go to Baines, and then they would go to Hightower. So if we take part of that, now we've got the children from Heritage Rose being split out again by splitting out the 225 from the 226. And so we felt like for the children, this was a far better thing. Transportation isn't a huge difference because the 245 A is already going to Ridge Point, so there's a 1 mile difference there. They're used to that. And then going back to the third main point that I know has been brought out this afternoon is that the SBOC never contemplated overtaking north of 6 and doing anything with 225 and 226. That's a new idea that's quite different, and those families have also not had any opportunity to provide input as well.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Whitbeck. I kind of want to have a turn.
Yeah.
I know y'all keep going. All right. So first of all, I want to thank my fellow board members. I want to thank the public and for those who served on the SBOC, and I especially want to thank Mrs. Martinez, Pael, and Jody. I know you guys have put a lot of work into this, and for any others, Karen at Cooperative Strategies, and all of you, you've put a lot of work into it. And the thing that I appreciate most is the honest feedback, and that sometimes things aren't easy. And actually, zoning typically, particularly at the high school level, is just not an easy thing to do. And so I appreciate y'all bearing with us in this process. For Mr. Fickle, I said it before and I'm going to say it again. I'm sorry that we've really squeezed time out of you opening this school, and affected your plans and kind of created this hardship on you. But I have confidence that you're going to make it happen despite our lack of time. And with this, there's just a couple main things where I'm at today, and that is SBOC. So SBOC, I think, it's interesting because we have folks who've spoke on it, honestly, negatively, right? But then I've also received counter communication from folks who were upset about the communication by some SBOC members, right? And that just tells you that we all think differently, right? Everybody has a different perspective, and we're not all always on the same page, and we have different vantage points. So I wanted to put that out there, particularly for those who'd communicated with the counter response. With that being said, you guys have all made it, many of you have made the same points as far as the SBOC being a part of the process and the integrity of our policy. And we made some adjustments towards the end because it seemed like we weren't coming to a consensus when it was time to potentially vote last time. So we did have that special workshop to take a deep dive and see if we could find a consensus. And it seems like we've moved in this direction. And it's my belief, and I'm just one vote, that with Scenario E, we not only are heeding administration's current recommendation and most of the integrity of what they originally recommended, and I'm sure they have immense reasoning why. We also have considerations of the SBOC, and actually some of the feedback, particularly that area of 25080, that is directly from SBOC, and it's also from the, what's that online platform?
Thought Exchange.
Thank you. Thought Exchange feedback as well. So it's consistent with listening to the community. And the other part about 245A not having the opportunity to really engage in the process for this alternative option into Hightower. For me personally, I understand the transportation savings, but I couldn't get behind that for just transportation alone. I think that our kids are more than just a bus ride, and that those families think that they're going to either Ridge Point or Crawford, and that's been the discussion this entire time. And so from Friday to today, basically doing that flip and expecting them to be aware because maybe they were on social media or watching a board meeting, that, speaking of communication, as Ms. Williams put regarding PEG, where we've actually communicated to every single family. We have not communicated this to every family, right, in that area?
That is correct.
Yeah,
yes.
They're unaware of this. So I am fully supportive of Scenario E for all of those reasonings. And I love that this scenario allows cap and overflow to return to Ridge Point, and those families have a choice. Or you're likely, that there's a strong probability of cap and overflow. returning and strong possibility of sibling. But there's a possibility?
There
I
is
thought
a
I heard that
possibility.
earlier.
There is a possibility, yes. We just need to have confirmed polling to get numbers.
Okay, well, I like having the possibility of those folks returning. I also support the possibility of transfers to Crawford, that I think Crawford's a phenomenal school, and that there's probably a lot of folks who'd like to have a carpool system and head on out to Crawford, or some sophomores who are 16 years old that couldn't drive to Ridge Point currently, and Crawford is going to have an open parking lot. And that those kids would be able to drive their vehicle down over to Crawford, and I think they'd enjoy it and have plenty of opportunity for all of the arts, sports, etc., and any other programs and activities there. And that's my 2 cents. Ms. Day.
So I'm sorry, I do have more question. For 243A, if they are going to Crawford, they're gonna pass Hightower.
Is the scenario?
Okay, so just only 245. Oh, that's why.
That's correct.
We may have. Okay, so I totally missed that because I thought if we move both, then they will have cabin for. Oh, yeah, that's the one.
So the reason, Ms. Day, the reason we pulled that last time, the 243A, is because they were never a part of the discussion. So it's the same sentiment that they weren't a part of the original discussion or anything that it was ever presented to the SBOC.
But, okay, there's a but.
And there are only 11 kids.
Okay, but if we put a 243A, like scenario D, if we can put both of them into Hightower because 243, that's the D, right? That's the D scenario. We're putting both 243 and 245 into Hightower. Is that correct, my understanding? Yeah, the D, scenario D.
That's correct.
That's correct, yeah. But long-term wise, that's probably follow up Ms. Malone's point. Will that give more possibility for the cap and overflow kids to stay in Ridge Point because we're freeing up more space from Ridge Point. And also we're not violating them passing Hightower because they are going to Hightower. I just want to make sure my understanding is correct.
Can I let you know that in 243A, there are currently about 11 students, and that's projected to increase only up to about 57 in the 10-year planning horizon. So there's not a large number there that would impact the utilization at Ridge Point.
Okay. Thank you for that. But based on the Friday when I watched the video, if I'm correct, we were under the impression most of the kids in Hightower, they may want to stay there, right? Because they have never been to, I heard that comment, they have never been to, anywhere else. So we are talking about very small number to start with. So that 11 or 50, 11. So that's, I'm just trying to see the factor of cap overflow playing into the decision making between scenario D and scenario E. Yeah, thank you.
I would say that either of these isn't going to make or break those decisions. I think what's going to make the decision on cap and overflow is going to be what the children and their parents want for them and how we can try to accommodate that. That's more, I think that's our greatest factor between these.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Day. Dr. Gilliam.
This is just a point of clarification. So this is what I heard today. I'm just trying to make sure that that's what I heard. So basically, 245A right now is with Ridge Point. We did not talk with this group of parents. Is that correct? About a change.
So 245A has been, just that one, has been a talk of discussion and was proposed to the SBOC as part of A. What was it called? Recommended Scenario A was one of the, not the original, but Scenario A, and that was going to Crawford. So this has been communicated.
Okay, that has been communicated.
was never communicated.
Okay, that's my next question. So in looking, okay, I understood that one. Okay, 226 and 225 has never come to the table and talked, we have not spoken with parents. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. For clarification again, but 240, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Take your
So
time.
245A has been talked to. They know that this may be happening.
Can I answer?
Yes.
I do not. Yes and no. I mean, there are some who may be following along.
Okay.
Yes. Was this part of the public push and communication that went out for feedback? No, it was not.
Okay.
It was a scenario that was then adapted from the feedback and shared with SBOC and shared with the board openly, this planning unit at the February 13th meeting. And then I know there was some social media that went out about today's meeting. There were announcements about Friday's meeting, but that would only be as many parents who may have seen that and engaged during the workday to watch either then or now that would know specifically about 245A, or if they engaged in the board meeting on the 13th.
Okay, and then one more question for clarification. Did 245A ever know anything about possibly going to Hightower?
My answer would be exactly the same. It's the same.
Okay. I'm doing clarification, not necessarily for Shirley. There's a lot of people watching.
Right. No, I do not.
Okay.
Unless you are somebody who's following very closely, this was
Okay.
not pushed out for communication and feedback in the same way that the original recommendation was through that public hearing process.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gilliam. Ms. Hannon.
Dr. Gilliam, just to add to your point, and administration can correct me if I'm wrong, the proposal that was called A, which is the planning unit 245A, was introduced to the SBOC during their fourth and final meeting, and then it came to us in the regular scheduled board meeting on the 15th.
I believe it was the 13th.
The 13th. Okay. So it wasn't part of the original hearing, nor was the 226 in the scenario E that we're looking at. So we're to me, we're sort of in the 226 was also never
wasn't
mentioned.
226 was part of the original recommendation?
No.
To go to Hightower?
Oh, to go to Hightower, yes,
Yeah.
but not the scenario D.
Correct.
The scenario D wasn't. And so, Dr. Gilliam, the 245A that was presented to the SBOC in the final and fourth meeting was for them to go to Crawford, not to go to Hightower. So they had not heard, even though that was informally introduced to parents that might have been watching, and I know I did get emails from two parents, so I know two parents heard it, but it wasn't part of the recorded hearing or the thought exchange. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the struggle with the timing, that we couldn't go back to the thought exchange due to the time constraints. And for me, that's why I feel most comfortable with scenario E out of these, if not the original recommendation. So, yes, Ms. Williams.
I have a quick statement to add. As it relates to Hightower, students and parents being notified. The students who are normally zoned to Rich Point. You cannot take a family who has sent their kid to a school as good as Rich Point and send them to Hightower High School, where we know just received a grade of a 70 and a 71. And I can tell you as a fact, parents who are attending Hightower are not happy. That school has a low socioeconomic population in the high 50s. If we're going to consider moving 245 from an A campus to a barely a C campus, I don't think it was fair, nor do I think it was communicated. That's why I'm supporting sending the kids to Crawford, where they have a fresh start. They're not going into a school that has already been failed, that's already, at a 70. These students will have an opportunity to make something great out of it. So I'm all for E as being the choice, and the parents should have been notified if you're going to change them from a A school to a D campus.
So I think, Ms. Williams, I received a recent notification letter for a change because of boundary changes from where my kids are at. But I think that happens after the board votes. And once it's been determined what the new zones are, they do send communication letters to every single parent notifying them of their new zone.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, a normal situation would be if the board done this and we made our decision, we voted, that's the end of story. Because the 258 was great and they were out there and they were being loud, they were able to come in here and give feedback. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's a great thing.
So that was also communicated out in the public too, that we were doing rezoning. For example, for the elementary campuses, you didn't hear all of the complaints on that, right? Because there weren't any about the new elementary school.
Oh, but that's
for Ferguson?
This is what's it, Scanlon Oaks?
No,
They ready to
not
fire up?
that. Ferguson Elementary, the new campus for the zoning, for example, that was communicated to the area as well. And so people who were zoned in that area received communication. Does that make sense? That this was all up for discussion.
I hear you. And that's what I'm saying. The information was out there, but the 258 took the information that was out there, and they chose to be a part of it.
Correct.
That's my point. And
yes.
It's not like the information was withheld from the community. It's that those parents who were active and listening to what was going on were the ones that
They were concerned.
Right.
Yes.
Well, all of them are concerned,
Yeah.
but you have to show it. You have to come here and, and make yourself heard is what I want the community to hear. Don't ever take something that's going on in our schools and be silent. Come and express yourself and let's see if we can work it out, which I think is what the 258 did.
Well, yeah, and in fairness for them, the way cap and overflow had been handled, most recently with being within the 2 miles, that it's understandable that there was a lot of confusion around it.
Right. So I'll applaud
And
them.
so this is a logical change to the scenario or a modification that seems to respect multiple areas and kind of, it seems like it's the best option we have at this point. You're good?
I'm good. I'm great.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're great. Are we all great? That's what I want to know. Are we ready to end this discussion?
Please.
I think there's.
You have more discussion, Ms. Hannon?
Mrs. Malone, I call for the question.
All right. I appreciate that. We can move along to action item. And are you good with that? It's the first one. Okay. All right, so that ends our information section. We'll move on to action, and that is to consider and approve the attendance boundary for Almeda Crawford High School. May I please get a motion?
Madam President, I move the Board of Trustees accept and adopt the superintendent's recommendation presented as Scenario E and establish the attendance boundary for Almeda Crawford High School, which will open in August 2023, which includes splitting students residing in MAP Section 258E between Ridgepoint High School and Almeda Crawford High School, and includes moving students residing in MAP Section 245A to Almeda Crawford High School.
We have a motion by Dr. Gilliam. May I please get a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Hamilton. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Williams?
No.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yeah, just wanted to say I'm excited about opening Crawford. I know it's been a long and arduous journey through a lot of landmines, if we will. But I'm excited about Crawford. I'm excited about Mr. Fickle's leadership there, and I think it was Mrs. Malone who made a statement that there are Sienna families who are excited about going to a new high school. And I have a friend who is staying in the Ridgepoint zone and disappointed that he's not. He was hoping his family would go to Crawford. So there is a lot of excitement in Sienna, even though the focus has been on the other side of that ledger. But I'm excited about that. And Mrs. Martinez made a comment about Hightower maybe getting to a little bit of a better utilization number. It's a little bit tight at Hightower, and it's above a little bit tight at Ridgepoint. And so I'm excited about the path forward. Some recent comments have been made that maybe we should not have opened Crawford this year, but I think it was definitely necessary based on the situation at Ridgepoint and Hightower. So I'm excited about where we're at and excited about moving forward with a brand new high school, the Crawford Chargers, right? All right. Go Chargers. I'm excited. You know who your number one fan on the board is going to be once the sports get started. I think we all know that, but just want to say I'm excited, and thank you everybody for participating in this and contributing, community members, SBOC, board, administration. Thank you all, and let's go Chargers.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say that to the community, to the public, we certainly do apologize it took this long. The process, I think, worked when you look at everything from point A to point B, and I understand that administration was trying to follow the policy, and the policy is written in such a way that some folks don't understand. But getting the feedback and working through thought exchange and working together with the board, I appreciate everybody's hard work and efforts getting to this point. And I know we probably spent a little bit more time on it than we should have. But I think at the end of the day, I want to just express my gratitude to the community for reaching out. Folks would ask me what can they do. I said you got to attend meetings. You got to email us, and you got to let us know what's going on. You have to participate in the process, be part of the process, thought exchange. So everybody worked very hard. I appreciate it. I know it's probably a little frustrating for y'all. So, but thank you. And we've made it, and congratulations, Mr. Fickle. Go Chargers! Look forward to a great year, and I can't wait in a couple of years for handing out those first diplomas. So thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Ms. Stay.
So I just want to say for this two scenario today presented, for me it's very hard decision, hard choice. They both have pros and cons. So I wanted to say this. The reason I'm going to vote for scenario E is really because that's the recommendations from the administration. Because it's really hard for me to think the kids will have to travel that far down, all the way to Crawford. For high school students, it's a big deal. Even in the morning, even 15 minutes, it's a huge deal. So I just wanna say that it's not an easy decision. I think I can, most of the board member feel the same way. So I want to thank you for everyone's hard work. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Stay. Dr. Gilliam. Oh, Ms. Williams.
I wanted to let everyone know I did not know boundary changes was this hard. I had no idea. I thought it was going to be a walk in the park. I want to especially thank the parents who were active and involved. I did not know that the principal was sitting out there, Mr. Finkel, and I asked Dave, and he said, yeah, that's the principal. So he thinks he's going to be your number one fan, but it's going to be me, trust me, because I've never had the privilege of watching the school open and seeing if it's going to go here, it's going to go here, or if it's going to go here. So now I'm going to be able to watch you from day one, and I'm going to help you. We're going to keep it here. But I just think it's an honor, it's a pleasure, and I'm just telling the community, everything doesn't have to be bad. It's how you start. And if we have a principal who's going to set that bar at day one, what your expectations are, Crawford is going to be great, and I'm excited. And he's not the number one fan. It's me, and I have on my tail for the next board meeting to let you know that. But the process has just been something to appreciate. I didn't know it was that much hard working for the staff. I didn't know it was that much hard work, and I had to step back because I'm like, how would you like to have people banging at you every day, every day, every day? And for you guys to be employees and have to get pounded every day, it's enough when we get pounded every day, every day. And I had a thought, I said, you know what? It doesn't feel good to you. Sure don't feel good to them because it's their job. So again, I appreciate what you do as well because this process has been something to look at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Williams. Dr. Gilliam.
So I'm going to try to make it funny. It's only 1:30, y'all. How about that? Okay. What I would like to say, I'm going to say ditto on everything that I've heard, so I won't take the time to do that. Mr. Fickle, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I've been in your seat, but not opening a school ever. I can only imagine your nights, your 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure out different things and what you can present to make things better so that 7 board members will understand. And so now with that, I definitely don't want to overlook the administration for all of the hard work that you all have put into it. I'm just glad that at least we're at a vote right now. Let's put it that way. We're at a vote. Today, I didn't know which way I was going, to be quite honest. So the conversation helped immensely. Also, just knowing when things come out and when parents know things so that we don't have to start this again next week. So hopefully we won't. But I appreciate everyone throughout this situation, this event, I guess you could say. And we definitely had some learning to do. We had a learning curve, and hopefully that we can go back and we can assess what went well and what we need to work on. So that would be my suggestion. Very quickly, we don't want to wait 2 weeks. I know we want to take a break, but we do need to look to see what we can do to, not that it's broken, just how can we get this to be better. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gilliam. Ms. Hannon.
Thank you for that, Dr. Gilliam, because while there are a few cases in life where everything goes very, very smoothly and perfectly, we know that this did not, but to Dr. Gilliam's point, I think some things went well, and we have some things that we learned that we will improve for the next time. And so I really want to thank all the SBOC members. I hope they will all return and be part of the revision process, so we can streamline and improve. Thank you, Mr. Fickle, for opening Crawford. But as we speak about Crawford, I just want to take a second because I want to remind everyone that the state accountability letter grade that a campus gets is very limited, right? And for our high schools, it's about test scores, it's about college career readiness, and it's about graduation rate. And so the school is more than that C or B or A. And so I just want to remind everyone that, because I actually have I know people whose kids go to Hightower and they're quite pleased with it. And so I think that's important, that we work really hard to not disparage the hard work that our students and our staff are doing on campuses. I want to thank the administration for all the work you've done and listening. You have a lot of stakeholders, including the ones on the dais that you have to listen to. And I want to remind people that might watch this that being a trustee is very hard in making decisions. And a yes vote or a no vote, sometimes a yes vote doesn't really mean that you agreed with it. And a no vote doesn't mean that you're not going to support your fellow board members and administration 100%, because once that vote is taken, every one of us is in charge of supporting the decision that was made. And so I want everyone to know that, and appreciate all the work that they've done. I appreciate Dr. Whitbeck leading her staff in this very, very challenging process. But thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Malone.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hannon. I want to give Dr. Whitbeck the opportunity to address something that had come to light surrounding the PEG transfers and the ability or inability to transfer, et cetera.
Okay. You ready, President Malone? So, yes, I've been asked to provide some clarity because This has been a journey, and I think as we open the 9th school in Siena that will serve the Siena community, and as I've returned about a year and a half ago and hearing the journey that Fort Bend ISD was on starting in 2018, which was alluded to by one of our speakers, I think Ms. Brown, about the challenge it was at the time for the district to decide whether there was going to be a Crawford High School or whether there was going to be massive redistribution of children, and that entire journey. And she used the term that ship has sailed, and that was because in one of my community meetings with Marshall, I said, that decision by the former board that was made to build a new school, then to go to a community for a bond election, pass it at 75%, then build a $180 million school, and then now it's our job to figure out how we populate it and help to make it another successful school in Fort Bend. And across that journey, and since the time, I think there's been a lot of different comments. There's been a lot of different things that have come along the way. And while we were in this journey, one of the things that I looked at closely with my team was cost analysis in terms of this is a school that will cost us about $5 million a year to operate. And the board may recall in several meetings in the fall that we had, even in one-on-ones, is this the right thing to do? Do we defer a year? And maybe even get creative in some other way, to the point that Dr. Mensa and Mr. Fickle and the principals will recall that I pulled them all together and kind of had a brainstorming session, like, do we have any other ideas? How could we make everything work for a year? So throughout all that process, though, there was a text that was shared out that basically said, admin does not want to open Crawford because they're concerned too many kids from Willow Ridge will go to Crawford. And so I want to clarify context of that, and perhaps the person who wrote it can help do that as well. But that was in a context of, do we even open the school? And from a context of an underutilized school with about 1,200 students. And when you pull away from it, you run a risk of it being not successful. We also have a very strong alumni at that particular school at Willow Ridge. Everywhere I go, I meet them. They're like leaders in the community. I mean, I can't go to a basketball game, I can't go to an event without meeting them, and they're all worried about Willow Ridge being reduced. So that comment was out of context. It was not about, if we open Crawford, will we not let them come on PEG? Of course. My whole preface months before was, is it the right thing to do to open this school, or should we defer it a year? And the board knows that, especially those of you that I meet with, almost all of you on one-on-ones. So we've done it. We're here. I wish that I hope we can go forward and have a relationship that if you question something, pick up the phone and call me. Ask me. I'm happy to clarify, because we want the Willow Ridge kids to have that opportunity through PEG. If we open it up across the district, they would have the same opportunity. We want that for our kids. It's important. And so, but taking things to social media and all is concerning, and especially when it's not in the correct context. So with that, I think, President Malone, I covered what I needed to cover.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Whitbeck. And I appreciate you sharing that and clarifying for the community and for those folks at Willow Ridge, so they know that they are welcomed and that is misinformation. And I just want to remind the board that we all agreed and signed to a ethics, and in our ethics it states specifically, I shall promote the best interest of the district as a whole, and to that end shall adhere to the following ethical standards, and that we're supposed to be fair, impartial, objective in all decisions and actions, that will be accountable to the public by upholding district policies and accurately representing programs, priorities, and decisions. I will tell the truth, and these are just a few. I'll accord others with the respect that I have for myself. And so I think in fairness, because if I'm correct, I think that was reposted again recently, this weekend. And honestly, it really saddens me and hurts my heart because this is the community, y'all have heard me say it over and over again, but that I grew up in and that I love and that I believe that every single kid matters and that I'm hopeful that we're trying to create a culture of kindness where we're working together for all kids. And right now, I know Crawford's at the heart of that and the focus, but that whether it's Willow Ridge, Crawford, Ridge Point, Hightower, it doesn't matter. That at the end of the day, we're trying to do what's best for kids. And so I would ask you all that if you're going to participate with any online engagement, that you would think before you post. That also, if you're going to quote someone, make sure you have it right and you understand the intention behind that rather than just passing along information. Or if you do receive information, that you would give someone the opportunity to express themselves and confirm or deny or discuss and create understanding that we are the leaders of this district. And it is imperative that we do what we ask of our children and our students. And that is to first seek understanding. And so that is my plea to each of you. I think that we've improved as a board overall over the course of this year, but I would ask that we continue to do so. And so with that, if any trustees want to add, just please feel free to. And I'm really sorry, honestly, I'm really sorry, Dr. Whitbeck, that you were the brunt of that bear. Go ahead, Ms. Hannon.
So I know we've gone off the path just a little bit here with this vote on this action item, but I just want to add to that. You know, just as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that I really think we should not be in the business of disparaging our schools because our staff is working so hard. And I would just really ask all of my colleagues on the dais, when you're engaging in social media, but before you post, if you have, even if it is in jest, if there is anything that you are posting as a trustee, it's not just you with your name, but you are clearly posting as a trustee in Fort Bend ISD. And if you are, and you have freedom of speech. I understand our rights. But if your intent is really to insult and ridicule anyone in any way, I implore you, to think about the code of ethics that we have agreed to when we, when we were sworn in and we got our packet that includes those board procedures that we have. Because I do see posts and I don't go looking for them, but unfortunately people in the community, they send them to me. And so they wind up in my text messages anyway. And anyway, I just really implore you, if your posts are intended really to disparage, to call out specific names of employees, to ridicule any person, population, anything, to accuse, and I'm going to call out a specific trustee, but when someone posts something that accuses a trustee and our chief of police of plotting to harm them in some way, that there is a line that should be drawn in the sand where that's inappropriate. And that's not the only post that I'm referring to. And that's actually, that person knows who that is. But there are other trustees I would also ask, just be very careful how you use social media, because I think none of us should be in any way trying to hurt anyone. I know we have to have thicker skin than the average Joe, because that's what we signed up for when we were elected.
Thank you, Ms. Hannon.
Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to, so that the text messaging question, just wanted to apologize to Dr. Whitbeck and for the way that that came about, and the way the situation that put you in, and just how I know how that affected you personally, and I'm sorry that I contributed to that situation playing out the way that it did. So one thing, I did not interpret the comment as only coming from you, so I thought it was an administration comment, not an individual comment. And so, but I did misunderstood what was behind the comment, because I thought the statement was made out of concern for how Willow Ridge students might impact Crawford. But now I understand it was a concern for Willow Ridge that too many students would leave Willow Ridge. And so I know that that the administration is committed to doing what's best for every campus, and I know you're working hard to do that. And yeah, I'm sorry for the way that all played out.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. And I'm sure hearing your apology means a lot publicly. Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess I'll chime in as well. And I want to piggyback off the sentiments of all my fellow trustees. You know, this is not an easy job, and you're up here, you're working countless hours, and it feels like sometimes when you see things and you have parents and teachers are sending you, messages and screenshots and things like that, that we're just working against each other. And I engaged a lot on social media at the time, at least also during the VATRE, just trying to get out as much information as I could, trying to be very engaging with folks. I don't engage on social media as much these days, but people know how to reach me and get in touch with me now more than ever. So it does make it very difficult. When I have two boys that attend Fort Bend ISD schools, and I have my wife teaches in this district. And I have a lot of love for the district, and it does what Madam President says. It hurts my heart when I see these things. And I just wish that, before I got elected, I would always ask the question when I would see something, and it doesn't matter who was posting it, if it was a constituent or a teacher or a parent, I would always ask them, so what did the administration tell you when you asked them? And the response that I got was almost always, well, I haven't contacted them. So, well, then how would you know if you didn't? So I've spent a lot of time fact-checking posts and comments and this and that. And what I've come to find out is there's not a lot of fact-checking going on. I'm doing all the fact-checking, and I'm finding out that the things that I'm seeing isn't actually what's being posted. So when we're talking about, well, these kids are moving from one school to the next, they're going to lose all their funding, I proceeded to ask about that question in administration, and I had conversations with our Title I expert, and it turns out that's not true, that the schools that are getting the most funding are those schools in these particular areas. So I do research a lot of these things, and it's good to ask the question, but it's also good to find out from the source where that information is coming from, if it's true or not, and if I hear another trustee say something, then I want to know as well if that's something true. So we need to work together is kind of my point. So, and it is unfortunate. And I think in the very beginning, I haven't even been on the board a year, and we're all a new board working together, and we're all trying to figure things out. So we should be talking to each other how we can prop the district up, instead of steering it into a direction that makes it seem like we're doing so many things incorrectly or wrong. We're not perfect. We want to do the best we can by our community, by all of our children. And maybe this might be a situation where moving forward on, Madam President, maybe on future board meetings, we put an agenda item where we're addressing posts that are out there that may be incorrect, or we're addressing this misinformation, because I think it's important. People hear it, and if they hear it, nine times out of 10 they think that it's true, unless we can say, no, it's not true. And it's unfortunate that we have to do that, but maybe that's something we need to look at, because the last thing I also want is I don't want posts or emails or texts that I'm sending out posted all over the place, I think it's very important that we're all courteous and respectful to each other, and that's kind of what I would also ask my fellow trustees as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And with that suggestion of addressing posts or misinformation, I welcome that, and we'll definitely take it into consideration moving forward. I think it's a great idea. Dr. Gilliam.
Thank you. I'm going to address this in a different way. I am an educator. I'm a career educator. And there are so many things, but I sit here as a trustee that just happens to be an educator and happens to work a little bit differently, especially when it comes to social media. For me, I do different things. There are many things, if I see a question or I see an issue, I'll just pick up the phone, I'll have a conversation, so who needs that information, they can hear my voice, they can hear my passion, and or they can hear if I'm angry or what have you from that. But I'd like to talk directly to that day of the post or the conversation that we had. We were in what we call a mini, what would you call that, Dr. Whitback, when we split up and we have a mini workshop. Okay, so, and there are three of us that are there, or two in person. And so and I am a witness. I know exactly what happened. And what happened is that we were talking about Crawford. We were talking about opening Crawford. And in the midst of that, it was a matter, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Whitback, because I'm going to recollect what I remember. It was just basically thinking about PEG and thinking that, okay, Willow Ridge would be able, because it was, well, where could Willow Ridge go, as a PEG school? Well, pretty much it would be, normally you can go anywhere, but normally what happens in a district is they say you can go to school A, B, or C. And so Dr. Whitback just, she shared, she goes, well, they could go to Willow Ridge. And it said to go to Willow Ridge or Crawford or what have you. But when it came to Willow Ridge, it was, oh my God, what are we going to do at Willow Ridge? Our kids, need everything that we're giving them at Willow Ridge. And it was more so, there's strength in numbers. And I totally understood the comment, because I'm like, oh my God, and it wasn't emptying Willow Ridge into Crawford at all. That's not what that was about. It was about what's going to happen with Willow Ridge, not what's going to happen to Crawford. But it was more so, how can we make sure that we are servicing all students at Willow Ridge? And I understood it immediately, because strength is in numbers. And when we're looking at high schools, especially when we're looking at school improvement, and I have a lot of experience when it comes to school improvement, it's a matter of, if you have 700 kids as compared to 2,000 kids, you're going to have trouble with 700 kids. And that trouble will be meaning that we're going to have to work really, really hard to make sure everyone is there. Not that we're going to that we don't do it in the other way, but the numbers assist and help, because we can have, of course, more personnel to assist and help and to get us where we need to be. So that particular day, I was there. Dr. Whitback had no ill feelings, nothing other than an educator, the superintendent of the district, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because we want all of our schools to be successful. So that is what I experienced. So she was not concerned about any impact where it came to Crawford. It was, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It was very much in to make sure that we were doing what was right for Willow Ridge High School. And I'm going to say, of course, everyone knows, 1989, I was my first teaching job, Willow Ridge High School for 10 years. I never, ever thought I would leave room 217. To this day, when I'm talking about my students, and you are correct, Dr. Whitback, everywhere we turn, we have successful students, and I can assure you, my students have called me, and how can I help? How can we get over there and make some things happen? So when it does come to social media, what I'd like to share also is that we need to be very careful. As I'm careful as a trustee, to where if I'm giving a personal opinion, an opinion that is not of the district, you're not going to see Board of Trustees after my name. You're not going to see trustee position 4. If it's my opinion and I own that, and we have to make sure that when we speak for the board, we have a president who speaks for the board. And when we go out and if we have that ID on and it's Board of Trustees, we're now representing the Board of Trustees. So I would just like for us to remember that and be very slow to speak of opinions that you may possess. I know that I have a lot of opinions. And many days I keep my opinions and my thoughts to myself because it's just my opinion. Now, a fact I'm going to say. But with that, I thank you for the time. I appreciate being able to share. And at the same time, we are here to do a job for the 80,000 students that are in this district. That's number one. Number two, we are here for our employees, our parents. I have to put 1, 2, and 3 there. We are here for a purpose and a job. When I walk into this building, wherever, if I'm coming through this door or that door, I'm coming in here to work. And I hope that my work ethic has shown, as well as the other work ethic that we have right here on the board. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Gilliam. Mrs. Day.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for this opportunity to clarify the post. I think we are referring to the public and to everyone who have seen that post. So for me, I think Dr. Rayback mentioned this to me during our one-on-one meeting. So the intention was very clear. As a superintendent, I think she has the interest for all the schools. And so her concern was we're going to lose a lot of students from Willow Ridge. And then given the current number at Willow Ridge, it's going to be very hard for Willow Ridge. I think that's really the intention to bring up even this statement. So another thing is I think every one of us, I will pick on my fellow trustees. I'm not going to repeat everything they already said, but I think every one of us, we experienced the hardship from the social media posts in the past by community members, by other people's, and then how what we said or what we done being taken out of context. So in that sense, I really feel how hard, how difficult it is for Dr. Wayback seeing those posts over and over again. So that being said, but I also want to thank you for Mr. Hamilton to explain what happened, and I really appreciate his honesty. It's not easy to sit behind the dais and to admit the mistakes you probably made and apologize. I think that's really hard to do, and I really appreciate Mr. Hamilton did this and set an example to everyone. Yes, as an elected official, like many of my fellow trustees said, your name is not your personal name anymore. You carry a lot of weight when you post something, when you say something. So I really encourage all of us to, like Mr. Garcia said, to do fact check before we post it. It's very hard, believe me. Sometimes even you are doing your best to put the fact there. When people read it, they can be taken out of context. If you didn't check the fact, then it's gonna be very easily be misunderstood and cause harm to the administrator and to your fellow trustees. So that being said, I really wanted the board we can all work together and be better for the district. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Day. Ms. Williams.
Thank you. I've been waiting a lifetime to be able to speak on this issue. You are awesome, Madam President. First of all, I want to start off by addressing the Hightower High School statement that was made on the desk. I am Hightower High School. My sister bought her first home at 4917 Hartwood Glen in Tier 1. I am Hightower High School. I did not disparage Hightower High School one time. What I stated was what the majority of the people who look like me, one more time, who look like me, who have called me and told me, Danetta, y'all can come over here and do something. I understand Hightower High School is no longer what it was back in 2000, 2001. We had a big movement from our inner city areas into that particular area. So when you want to accuse me, well, when someone accuses me of saying something bad about it, I'm not. I'm going to call it what it is, and I'm also going to tell the administration we can do better, and we can help those kids. Because Hightower High School shouldn't be at that level. It just shouldn't be. The parents want to get in and do something. We just haven't gotten together to connect to make it better. I know it's 59% or higher low socioeconomic. I know what's over there. So it's not anything like I'm saying something derogatory about them, because I am Hightower. And just like if you were to address your kid, you're not addressing your kid to correct your kid because you hate him. You're addressing your kid to correct the behavior because you want better. So don't take my words as me saying something about bad about Hightower High School. Secondly, I want to address when we get to talking about the board ethics. The board ethics apply to all of us on here, not just me. So when we look at our policies, be it conflict of interest statements or what have you, when we look at our policies, that's part of our ethics as well. And we have to make certain that all of our trustees adhere to those policies, not just Danetta. Thirdly, when we talk about the post that Mr. Hamilton forwarded to me, the text message, I was minding my business. I was sitting at home. Mr. Hamilton sent me a text message. And in that text message, Dr. Whitback, was followed by, I done what, OMG, and then he went on to list the schools about how Willow Ridge was performing. So I took all of that in the face that he sent along with the text message, and I'm like, oh, it has something to do with their grades and their reading level or what have you. I made the post about the administration not wanting the kids to be there because that is what I was told. I didn't pull this out of the sky. I was told this from a duly elected trustee, and I proceeded to post the information. Was that probably my best moment, or should I have not done it? In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have done it. But considering how I've been treated since this board, I've been here, I can't say, well, I want to apologize to you first of all because you are an employee. And if it was any other of us up here who were elected, I can understand. And that's when I made the statement about it has to be hard to have someone pounding at you on your job. It's one thing when you sign up to be a volunteer. It's another thing when it's your job. So I took it at face value, what was told to me. And, I joke a lot with David, so I'm going to own mine. And I'm going to say, hey, I got it from him. I was childish, and I put that out there because I took it at face value because I know Dave is a man of his word. But with that being said, let's go about apologizing. Out of all 7 of you, when we talk about placing stuff on the board, out of all of my trustees sitting up here, well, y'all wasn't here. Dave wasn't here, neither was him. The only person that has ever called me and said, you know what, Danetta, what was done to you was wrong. I had a 26-minute and 43-second conversation with Judy Day while she was traveling this summer. The only person who said to me, I didn't want to do that to you. That's why I don't like Tasby. It's because they done it. I did sleep for 3 nights when they done that to you. For me to hear Judy Day say that meant a lot to me. None of you want to talk about what Danette is saying and how Danette is acting. Have y'all ever thought about what you posted on the district's website that you knew was a lie. So when we talk about ethics, I can own my bad behavior. You guys need to be able to hold yours. And the Texas Rule of Civil Procedure 165A will be in play, because you have to notify someone when you're going to dismiss a call. So just because someone reappears doesn't mean that, and you don't know what I'm saying, but the person who this message is for understands that we'll be back at the same place where we were 2 weeks ago. But with that being said, don't just hold me accountable. Don't talk about what I said about Chief Roddy and the trustee. Those were facts. And if you want the paperwork, I'll provide it to you. Those are emails that I got in 2012. I know who followed me. I know what happened. I'm not going to lie on you because I have no reason to hate any of you. I came in here to each and every one of you extending a hand, with the exception of Dr. Rose Gilliman, and I'm going to admit that she and I have had issues in the past, but I do appreciate and respect the hard work she puts in on this board. But I tried to be coming here and be friendly to everyone. So to say that I'm up here just causing trouble, no, you guys have done a lot. And all of that should have stopped about a year and a half ago. Somebody should have said, time out. That's not what we do. If we got a problem, let's clap it in. Let's bring Danetta in and let's talk to her. We don't go get a report, plaster it on the district website, and then you're indignant because I push back. That's not fair. So, with that being said, hold everyone accountable. Dr. Whitback, if that's your intent, I'm going to publicly say I apologize to you, because I don't want it. Ugly things said about me, which have been said. But as an employee, I'm going to take that back. Well, I can't take it back because it's already out there. But I'm going to publicly apologize to you because I took Dave's word.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And remember, you have my cell phone. So ever you need clarification, you text me, I'll call you back just like I do everyone, and we can always be clear on what was intended or what happened, okay? Thank you.
Great.
All right. Ms. Day.
I just want to, since Ms. Williams mentioned my name and the phone call, to be honest, it's a year, right? Almost, I don't remember. She mentioned doing the traveler, and I do remember we had a phone call. I appreciate Ms. Williams bring that up. I don't remember the exact wording, but I do remember I said it was very hard. It's very difficult for me, and I believe it's very difficult for everyone on the board. Nobody wants to do this to another fellow trustee. And I did make a comment and Tasby. I'm going to own what I said, because I said when I first on the board, I was told many times we work as a team of 8. And when we vote, many times people have expectation to have a 7-0 vote. I did share that with you, Ms. Williams, and I do remember that. But I just want to make sure that the public understand it is difficult. I think it's difficult for all of us to come out and, to denounce one of us. So that being said, though, I at that time when we presented the report by the investigator, I did vote I made my decision to vote the way I voted. So I'm gonna own that, and so that's all I wanted to say. So thank you, Ms. Williams, for bringing that up. And also another thing is, since we're talking about Chief Ryder, he's not here today, but I want to say there's another post from Ms. Williams regarding to the audit committee meeting was at the Fort Bend ISD police station. For that day, the reason we were there, Ms. Garcia and we were there because Chief Ryder wants to show us how confident and what kind of great job the team is doing, because we were doing a active shooter audit, and that's really the purpose. And Miss Williams got an invitation, and she sent me an email at 2:00 in the morning saying she wasn't feeling well. And so it really was too late to cancel. So me and Ms. Garcia went ahead to meet with Chief Ryder and his team at the Fort Bend ISD police station. So Ms. William, when I saw your post seeing me and Chief Ryder, I don't remember the exact wording, but you said I pretend to have the meeting. Actually, we did have the meeting. And me and the Chief Ryder, we were not planning anything to harm you. So please, Ms. William, again, you have my cell phone, right? You have my number. And if you have any, thoughts about the intention or the meeting place, I'm really open to the discussion. And you can just tell me, hey, Judy, I don't feel comfortable having the meeting over there. I prefer to have it at the administration building. We can totally make that happen. I really want you just, before, again, back to the original reason we're here, before you post anything on social media, please remember you're elected official and a lot of people respect you. And what you say over there on the internet, they carry a lot of weight. So I just want to please.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to say something. I apologize to you for that, but offline, I'm going to share with you what phone call was provided to me and gave me a warning not to show up. So again, I should have called you. But what I done was I sent you, I think it was 5, Judy. I went up at 2, but it was like 5 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
And I should have called, but I'm like, here they go again. Because only God knows what I've been through up here. And nobody deserves that. No one deserves to go through what I went through. Nobody. But you were the only somebody that owned it. And I don't care what you do in life, I appreciate you for that. I appreciate you for just being, you and having the guts to say no. So I thank you, Judy.
Okay, so now I think we can end this conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Day. Thank you, Ms. Williams. I think I'm going to end with this. Our kids, they do these things called restorative chats. We just had our little restorative chat, it sounds like. But conflict resolution is not easy, and being a public figure is not easy either. And it comes with its own set of challenges. And working with people you've never worked a day in your life with, and that the public elected, let me just tell you, that's not easy either. That this position comes with its own set of challenges that are very unique. And so I'm sure this isn't the end of our challenges, but what I want to express right now is, one, my appreciation for both Mr. Hamilton and Ms. Williams in supporting our superintendent, and with your heartfelt apologies. That means a lot to me. As I mentioned to you before, how it saddened. So hearing that, it just gives me hope, right? And so I appreciate that. For me, I want to address one thing with you, Ms. Williams, and that is that I respect the position here, and I respect the public, and that the public elected each and every single one of us to these offices, and that I take that to heart myself. And it is my goal to make sure that I choose respect every single time I'm sitting here, or whether I'm on the phone or any of that with each of you, that it is our job to work together, not for ourselves, but for those who we serve. And that it is an honor to serve Fort Bend ISD, the county, the stakeholders, for our kids, the staff, and this administration. And it is imperative that we make it a focus to work together for the greater good and as one FBISD. And so with that, I'm going to move on and end discussion, and please vote.
And Madam President, we're voting on option E, correct?
Yes, the motion that Dr. Gilliam, so the motion that Dr. Gilliam made and Mr. Hamilton seconded was for option E, not modified D.
Thank you.
Please vote. Okay, and the motion carries 6-1. May I please get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
The time is 2:11 p.m. and we are now adjourned. Thank you all. And go Chargers.